I thought it was going to be a typical Saturday afternoon at my favorite coffee shop, listening to my favorite rapper on my headphones. But then Karen walked in and accused me of worshiping the devil for listening to Ice Spice. What started as a harmless conversation soon turned into a heated argument that attracted the attention of everyone in the coffee shop. Here's how it all went down. It was a typical Saturday afternoon, and I was taking advantage of my day off by spending it at my favorite coffee shop. I had my headphones on, listening to my favorite rapper Ice Spice, and sipping on my latte. It was a nice, relaxing day until Karen walked in. Karen was a middle-aged woman with a scowl on her face. She walked in with her son, who was around 10 years old. I didn't pay much attention to them at first, but Karen noticed my headphones and asked me what I was listening to. I politely told her I was listening to Ice Spice, but that didn't seem to satisfy her. Karen immediately jumped to the conclusion that Ice Spice must be a satanic band. I tried to explain that it was just a harmless pop band with no religious affiliations, but Karen didn't believe me. She started to loudly accuse me of being a devil worshiper, which attracted the attention of everyone in the coffee shop. I was embarrassed and angry, but I tried to stay calm. Despite my attempts to reason with her, Karen demanded that I turn off my music and leave the coffee shop. She started to shout that she wouldn't tolerate devil worshippers in her community. I was shocked and didn't know what to do. I took off my headphones and tried to reason with Karen. Ma'am, I assure you that Ice Spice is just a harmless rapper. They have no religious affiliations whatsoever. But Karen wasn't having it. I know what I heard, she said, her voice rising. That music is evil. It's a tool of the devil, and you're a devil worshiper for listening to it. I could feel my blood starting to boil. That's ridiculous, I said. I'm not a devil worshiper. I just like the music. Karen was getting more and more agitated. I won't tolerate this kind of behavior in my community, she shouted. You need to leave right now. I was starting to feel really embarrassed. The other customers in the coffee shop were staring at me. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I also didn't want to just give in to Karen's demands. I'm not leaving, I said firmly. I have every right to be here and listen to whatever music I want. Karen was not happy with my response. You're being disrespectful, she said. You need to show some respect for other people and their beliefs. I am showing respect, I said. I'm not doing anything wrong. You're the one causing a scene. At this point, Karen's son started to get upset. Mom, can we just go? He said, tugging on her sleeve. No, we can't, Karen snapped. I need to teach this girl a lesson. I was getting really frustrated. I don't need a lesson, I said. I know what I believe, and I'm not going to let you bully me into changing that. Karen was starting to look really angry. You're the one who's being a bully, she said. You're forcing your beliefs on me and my son. I'm not forcing anything on anyone, I said. I'm just listening to my music. Your music is evil, Karen said, and you're going to pay for it. I could feel my heart racing. This wasn't how I wanted to spend my Saturday afternoon, but I also wasn't going to let Karen bully me into leaving. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. This wasn't worth getting worked up over. I took a sip of my latte and put my headphones back on. Maybe if I just ignored Karen, she would go away. But Karen wasn't going away. She was getting more and more agitated by the second. I won't stand for this, she said. You need to leave right now. I'm not leaving, I said firmly. I have every right to be here and listen to my music. Karen's face turned red with anger. You're being disrespectful, she shouted. You need to show some respect for other people and their beliefs. I am showing respect, I said. I'm not doing anything wrong. You're the one causing a scene. At this point, everyone in the coffee shop was staring at us. I could feel their eyes on me, judging me. I wanted to crawl under a rock and disappear. But I wasn't going to let Karen win. I wasn't going to let her bully me into leaving. I took a deep breath and stood my ground. You're not going to bully me into leaving, I said. I have every right to be here and listen to my music. Karen seemed to be taken aback by my sudden shift in attitude. You're not going to leave? She said, her voice shaking with anger. No, I said firmly. I'm not leaving. Karen started to look around as if searching for help, but no one was coming to her aid. Everyone in the coffee shop seemed to be on my side. You're a devil worshiper, Karen said, her voice rising. You're going to pay for this. I rolled my eyes. I'm not a devil worshiper, I said. I'm just listening to my music. Karen seemed to be at a loss for words. She just stood there, staring at me with a look of pure hatred. You need to leave, she said finally. Right now. I'm not leaving, I said. You can't bully me into leaving. Karen looked like she was about to say something else, but then she seemed to change her mind. She grabbed her son by the arm and stormed out of the coffee shop, muttering curses under her breath. I watched her go, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I had stood up for myself, and I had won. I took a deep breath and put my headphones back on. I was going to enjoy my music, no matter what Karen thought. Sarah's friend Emma, who had been sitting nearby, joined the conversation and tried to reason with Karen. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said. "I think you're making a mistake. Ice Spice is just a rapper, not a satanic band. There's no need to cause a scene." Karen turned to Emma, her face red with anger. "You stay out of this," she said. "This is between me and her." Emma wasn't deterred. "I'm just trying to help," she said. "There's no need to be so aggressive." Karen wasn't listening. "You're all the same," she said. "You young people, with your devil music and your lack of respect. You have no idea what it means to be a decent human being." Sarah was starting to feel angry again. "That's not true," she said. "We're just trying to enjoy our music. There's nothing wrong with that." Karen wasn't convinced. "You're all going to hell," she said. "Mark my words." At this point, some of the other customers in the coffee shop started to speak up. "Excuse me, ma'am," one of them said. "I think you're being a little harsh. There's no need to call people names." Karen wasn't listening. She was still shouting about devil worship and the decline of society. But gradually, as more and more people spoke up, she started to quiet down. Finally, one of the customers had had enough. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "I think it's time for you to leave. You're causing a disturbance and making other people uncomfortable." Karen looked around, as if realizing for the first time that she was the only one causing a scene. She looked embarrassed, but also defiant. "Fine," she said. "I'll leave, but I want you all to know that I'm not going to stand for this kind of behavior." And with that, Karen picked up her son and stormed out of the coffee shop. Sarah and Emma were left sitting there, feeling relieved, but also a little shaken. "That was insane," Sarah said, taking a sip of her latte. "I know," Emma said. "I can't believe she thought Ice Spice was a satanic band." Sarah laughed. "I know, right? It's just a rapper. I can't believe she made such a big deal out of it." Emma nodded. "Well, I'm just glad it's over. I don't think I could have taken much more of that." Sarah smiled. "Me neither, but you know what? I'm going to keep listening to Ice Spice. I like their music, and I'm not going to let anyone tell me otherwise." Emma grinned. "That's the spirit," she said. "You do you." LOL, that Karen sounds like a real piece of work. Glad she stood up for herself and didn't let her bully her out of the coffee shop. Also, Ice Spice is just a rapper, not a satanic band. What's wrong with that Karen? I grew up in a cult that believed, among other things, that women were the property of men and children were the property of parents. So, as an unmarried daughter, I was basically a cherished slave. I ran the house, planned meals, cooked, and even homeschooled my youngest siblings, all while trying to homeschool myself through high school. Having grown up my whole life this way, I didn't even know the law would have been on my side if I had decided to defy my parents and move out when I turned 18. My parents constantly reminded me that until they gave me away to a husband, I was still their child, and would obey them, as the spokespersons of God in my life. One day my parents told me they had received a phone call from the parents of another family we knew. Their oldest son had noticed me and wanted permission to court me, so per protocol the parents would talk to each other, then each talk to their kids and arrange the whole thing. My mom was beaming with pride, but I thought about it for a little bit and said I didn't want to do it. Mom's smile disappeared and she cried, "What? Why?" I gave her my reasons. Very good ones, I thought, but my mom wasn't satisfied and told me I was not allowing God to work in my life and that I should just obey them and trust that God's will would be done. Being the good girl I was, I relented and said yes. Then followed a week or two of awkward family gatherings between our two houses, because this version of courtship never allowed for the couple to be alone together. I tried to ease the tension by telling funny stories and encouraging other family members to talk, but only received stern rebukes from his mother, who very clearly did not approve of me. Once she said, "We don't believe in practical jokes, so we are not impressed by that story." I mumbled that I wasn't trying to impress them, and they could talk about anything they wanted, but no one did. Another time, I was alone with his mom in the living room, and she stated, I only had 2 requirements on the girl he chose. 1, that she came from a good family, and 2, that she knew her Bible. And you have both of those, so I'm not going to say anything. I was confused at feeling so rejected when I didn't even want this in the first place. I mean, really, who was courting who? Then I got a job offer as the church receptionist, and my parents told me his parents had called them again and said they did not approve of women working outside the home and didn't want me to take the job. We believed the same way, except it was after the woman was a mother. Before she had kids, it was up to her father or husband whether or not she could work somewhere else. This being a strange situation where my father allowed it, but the guy I was courting didn't, my parents told me to call him and get his permission too. I thought that phone call went well. He basically said he was not my husband yet, and I should follow my own family's rules. He didn't mind and was okay with it, so I happily accepted the job. The next day, my parents told me his parents had called and canceled the whole relationship. It felt weird to get dumped without ever hearing from the guy dumping me, but it solved my problem, and I moved on a little confused, and definitely not in the mood for anyone else to court me. 2 years later, at 19, I still wasn't married. Asterisk shocker asterisk. And his family thought that meant God was saving me for him. The whole scenario repeated itself, but this time, my dad insisted that the guy court him first so he could decide if he was even good enough for me before my heart got broken again. My dad told them until he made a decision one way or the other, he did not want any of them to contact me and tell me what was going on. The guy decided no contact couldn't possibly mean letters, so he wrote me a 5-page apology for dumping me 2 years before and confessing that he had been falling in love with me and wanted to know if it was worth his time to even get to know my dad. My parents saw his name on the envelope and confiscated the letter before finally deciding it was too late, and they explained the whole thing. I was honestly insulted that a guy I had barely seen in 2 years would say he loved me, but doubt if it was worth his time to follow my family's requirements to court me. Especially after the last time he tried it, his family made me feel like trash. We agreed to meet at a local restaurant and agree on the terms of the relationship and decide if we even wanted to try it again. I sat on one side of the table with my parents on either side of me. He sat on the other side with his parents on either side of him. It felt like we had lawyers. His dad immediately started yelling at my dad for denying his son and saying it was so obvious that I wanted this and he was holding me back. My dad is a quiet man, and he sat there like an angry stone while this man yelled at his face in the middle of the restaurant. It got so heated and embarrassing, the guy who liked me excused himself to the bathroom to throw up. While he was gone, his dad also said if we didn't accept his son, there might never be another guy to come along and marry me. This made me laugh because I wasn't that desperate to just accept the first guy to ask, just because I was scared no one else would. I didn't care if I ever got married or not, even though I didn't dare tell anyone else that. The evening ended with an agreement that we would pick up where we left off. We thought that meant more courtship. They thought they already did courtship, so now it was an agreement to get engaged. The mistake quickly revealed itself a few days later when another guy friend I had, new guy, emailed my dad himself and asked permission to court me. My dad told me I should tell the guy I was courting and ask him if I could stay friends with a guy who liked me, but who I had rejected. The guy came up with what I thought was a pretty good plan. My dad would tell him I was already courting someone else, and then I could introduce him to some of my other friends, and then maybe he would leave on his own. I thought that was brilliant, and my dad spent the rest of the evening writing a tactful reply to the new guy. The guy I was courting was now aware that I had friends who were not female. Their family believed guys and girls could never be just friends, so I was essentially cheating on him with 20 other guys. He called me the next morning, 6 days after I had agreed to this courtship, and asked my permission to ask my dad's permission to ask me to marry him. Basically the lamest over-the-phone proposal ever. He said he was in love with me, and we didn't have to get married right away, but that I would just be his and have a ring on my finger so no one could take me away from him. I told him I was flattered that he thought he loved me, and I wished I could say I loved him back, but I didn't. It had only been 6 days, and I hadn't even decided how I felt about him yet. His voice changed instantly, and he angrily snapped, asking if I was still talking to that guy who also liked me. I was shocked. I had never seen this side of him before. That's why it should take longer than 6 days to find a spouse. Kids. I tried telling him that my dad had only just replied to his email, and I hadn't had a chance to introduce him to my friends yet. He said, "That wasn't the plan. We agreed you wouldn't talk to him anymore." I shut him down and said, "Whoa, I'm only doing what you told me to do. We are not engaged yet. I talk to lots of guys, and it doesn't mean anything romantic. We're just friends." His voice quieted down, but still sounded bitter, and he said, "Well, if you can't agree to not talk to any other boys and only talk to me, maybe we shouldn't call this courting right now." "Maybe we shouldn't," I replied. We agreed that I would take a week to think about it and call him when I had made my decision. Marry him and forsake all the male friends I had known since I was 5, or cut off the relationship for the second time. I told my parents what happened, and they tried to convince me to just do what he wanted, but I finally yelled at them for the first time in my life that I was not going to marry anyone I did not love. My dad was angry, but my mom sent me to my room and said we could talk about it later. I had a week after all. I was very sad. The only reason I was considering it was because my parents insisted it was God's will, and I really wanted to do what God said. But at the same time, this family seemed even more strict than my own, and I would also miss all my old friends. There was so much to think about. About an hour later, I got 2 calls from this guy's mother, which I let go to voicemail. I didn't want to talk to her right then. Next thing I know, my little brother came up holding the house phone, saying it was the guy's mom, and she demanded to talk to me. She scolded me for a long time, saying I had cheated on her son and that he had called off work this morning because he was worried sick over calling me and asking me to marry him. She all but called me a harlot because of all the guys I was talking to, while I tried to tell her I was not in a relationship with any of them. Guy's mom accused. You cheated on him! You are in a relationship with every person you meet! I immediately answered back. But not every relationship is a romantic one. Guy's mom then continued. Between guys and girls, yes. For example, my husband is my best friend and I would never talk to other men and neither would your mom. I said. Oh yes, she would. She talks to other men all the time and she's friends with lots of people. Guy's mom wouldn't back down. Well, I'm shocked, she said. I honestly thought better of her than that. She then demanded to know why I needed 7 days to pray about whether or not to marry her son. Guy's mom adds, God doesn't take that long to answer prayer. It sounds like you already know how you feel and you're just too scared to say it. It should take a day or two at the most, I said. Look, your son agreed to let me have a week. If he can't do that, then the answer is no. Guy's mom then finally said, well, let's not be too hasty. I thought, who's being hasty? I wanted a week. She then told me she would go talk to her son and her husband and see what they wanted to do. I hung up the phone and threw it across the room. I had never been accused of anything like that before, and I curled up in a ball and cried. My mom heard me and came to see what was wrong. When I told her everything that horrible woman said to me and I stated firmly that I never wanted to see anyone from that family again, she called my dad up and he was angry for me being accused of being a harlot with all these boys, but told me I was not allowed to make my decision until a week was up, because that was what I had agreed to. I just silently told myself they could all think what they wanted, but I knew my answer was no, and it would still be no a week from now. He called the family back and told them none of them were to contact me in any way, shape, or form for the whole week. And when I'd made my decision, he would call them and let them know what it was. They were angry, but they never contacted me again. Almost 2 years later, I married the new guy who had emailed my dad. He was not a member of our cult, and taught me how to think for myself. Our courtship looked a lot more like dating than anything else, and made a lot of people upset, but we didn't care. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary, and we have 3 sons. I feel like I was rescued. Wow, what a crazy story. It's hard to believe that these kinds of things still happen in today's world. I'm so glad that she was able to escape that toxic situation and find happiness with someone who treats her with respect. It's important to remember that everyone deserves to be treated as an equal and not as someone else's property. Sending love and support to anyone who has been through a similar experience. It was a pretty mild summer, so the turnout was higher. Go figure, people didn't want to be boiled to death while trying to eat a piping hot funnel cake in the middle of the day. Who knew? I'm going about my day doing normal Saturday chores, lawn, and grocery shopping. I get back from the store, and by some miracle no one is blocking my mailbox. Good. My mailman is incredibly lazy and won't approach if a car is too close. Also, stories for a different subreddit, and no one's in my driveway yet. With things put away in the house, I go outside. My trash cans, recycling, green waste, and general garbage are out on the road because for some reason it makes sense for the busiest street to have pickup on days events are consistently happening on it. I'm surprised to find the trash has all been picked up before noon, so I should be able to get them all pulled back to my house before there's a lot of people trying to use them. The fairgrounds literally have over 100 trash cans set up or someone tries to move them to park, which according to city code, they aren't allowed to do. But again, the cops in this town don't care at all. I was wrong. I'm walking out my door as a car pulls up in front of my bins. A dad, 2 boys, and grandpa get out. I'm not even 5 feet away. This old guy had to have seen me. He walks to the back of their SUV, opens my green waste bin, and tries to throw a mostly full Gatorade bottle in. I yelled, "Excuse me, please don't throw your garbage in my bins." The old man turns to me, puts his hand to his ear, and goes, "What?" like he's hard of hearing. I'm not deterred by this because unless he's colorblind and mostly visually impaired with dementia, he knows better. I repeat myself, "Please don't put your garbage in there." The dad of the boys calls out, "Come on, Dad, let's go." Magically, the old man's hearing is perfect. His son was further away, still by the front of the SUV, and the old guy says, "It's not that big of a deal," and walks away, bottle in hand. Sir, why did you need to throw away a mostly full bottle? Why couldn't you have carried it another 30 feet to the public bin across the street? Why did you go for the green waste bin when the garbage can is next to it? Great way to start my afternoon. Later that afternoon was my first entitled Parker. I go to look out my front window, trying to decide if it's worth it or not to go over and get a cupcake from one of the stands I really like. Lo and behold, there's a weird car in my drive. I ask my neighbors, not theirs. They thought we got a new one. They tell me to call the police because that's what a cop told them to do. We could get in trouble for any damage to the vehicle, and a towing company could charge us since it's our property. Being 22 at the time, I accepted this truth because adulthood comes with lots of rules, so okay. I go back to my house to call the cops. As I'm going in my door, I hear the car start and turn to see a gaggle of women getting in. I'm already annoyed, so I yell, "This is private property!" The driver pops back out of her car and says, "We weren't even here that long!" Because that somehow matters? I decided I'm not going low, so I just go back inside and tell my husband that night I'm slashing tires from now on. He looks me dead in the eye and asks, "You want them to leave, so why would you make it so they can't leave?" Realizing what I just said? Well, I don't know what I'm gonna do then. It really should not be that hard to respect other people's property. To anyone thinking, well, I'd rather not litter, so that's why I use random strangers' trash cans. Do you realize you can just hold onto your crap and not litter in general? Or if you're that desperate to throw something away, you can knock on someone's door? I've had people, just on a normal day, walk all the way down my driveway and into my lawn to get to my trash can to throw something away. That's just obnoxious. Wow, what a crazy day. Who knew throwing away your own trash could be so difficult? And entitled Parkers? Don't get me started. But seriously, why can't people just respect other people's property?